Hello everyone and welcome to the Good Old Gamer. So today's video has actually been pushed forward because of recent events. And this is actually going to be kind of broken up into different sections. I will put timestamps down below, but I'm gonna go over my personal experiences with DDR5, why I don't believe that it makes sense for PC gamers at this point in time. And my community really reacted poorly to the Hardware Unboxed video yesterday, and I want to try to go ahead and explain why that video is having such a backlash, as I really want to get Steve on board moving forward to going ahead and giving you guys the best possible information. So I'm going to go ahead and show you my benchmarks using the exact same games that Steve tested, or some of the same games, and show you how those results should have been. So that's what we're gonna be taking a look at here in today's video. We're gonna clear up this whole DDR4 versus DDR5 sort of mashup that's going on right now. I did a video not too long ago showing you guys that yes, DDR5 is getting better, but it's still more expensive and not quite as good. It's just not quite there yet. That opinion has not changed, but I'll go over everything in detail in this video. We're gonna take a look at a bunch of stuff, so grab some popcorn, let's have some fun, take a look at some numbers, and this way you guys have all the information you need to figure out what makes the most sense for you. All right, so what really sparked this video and pushed it forward is Hardware Unboxed, good friend of the channel, Steve Walton over there. He went ahead and put up a couple of videos about DDR5. Saw this one the other day where he bought some cheap stuff, which honestly, I was planning on doing content on that. So I'm like, okay, go ahead and have fun with that. And then this video showed up yesterday, which I was like, okay, it looks like he's really on board with this DDR5 thing, but whatever, that's not a big deal. I didn't watch the video personally, but I had many members reaching out to me saying there's some issues with this. And once I took a look at it, I was like, okay, I think Steve and I need to have a chat. So hopefully this video will explain to everybody, you guys, Steve, I'm just trying to help out here. I'm trying to show you where you went wrong. So let's go ahead and jump in the video and take a look at a few key points. All right, so taking a look at the test system here, he's using the Intel Core i3-12100. Good on you, Steve. It's an awesome CPU. Anybody who watches my channel knows I love this little guy. He's using the iQ150i Elite. Not sure, I think that's 360 or maybe even a 420. I'm not sure on that one. We have Z690 Tomahawk DDR4 and DDR5. Okay, that makes sense. Use basically the same board for both. Cool. Then we're using the Trident Z RGB 32 gigabyte DDR5 6400 C32 kit. This is very similar to the DDR4 6400 kit that I have, and I will talk to you guys in length about my experience with that later on. So pretty much the best of the best out right now. Then he's using the cheapo DDR5 4800 C40 kit. Okay, you know, that makes sense. But this is where things kind of fall apart here. So he's using this Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro DDR4 4000 C19 kit. At face value, that's just fine. But the problem here is the Core i3 cannot run DDR4 4000, not in Gear 1. And I'll explain to you guys the main differences between those here in just a sec, but you just have to remember this has to be running in Gear 2. I could get at best on my 12100, 3600 out of it, and that's at the pinnacle of everybody out there. I got people yelling at me saying, I can't get anywhere near that. So 3600 is really about the max you're gonna get on something like this, maybe 3733. So effectively, this is just not possible. And this is what we're really gonna be focusing on in this video. He's also using the G.Skill RGB 3200 C14 kit. This is a dual rank kit. So this is B-die. I have a 3600 C14 kit, B-die dual rank, which I will use at 3200, and I will compare it to single rank 4000 later on in this video. And then I guess he's just using some DDR4 2400 C15, like super cheapo kit. This is all being done with an RTX 3090 Ti, which is perfectly fine for this type of test. So the real issue is this one right here, because it just doesn't make sense being paired with this unless you tune this down to something like 3600, 3400, but then you'll have to tune down your timings to match. Otherwise, it just simply doesn't make sense. In reality, you should have just taken this kit and bumped it up to 3400, 3600, whatever this could do. So if you guys are unfamiliar what I'm talking about when I say Gear 1, for Intel, this is very similar to what AMD has when we talk about a one-to-one fabric clock ratio. Effectively, you don't run Zen 3 at 2-to-1. So meaning like if you wanted to run DDR4 like 4400 on a Zen 3 chip, you just don't do it because you're going to lose a lot of performance. Same thing here with the i3-12100. You don't run DDR4 4000 at gear 2 versus something like 3600 at gear 1 because you lose a lot of performance that way. And this is something that, well, either one, Steve is just unaware of, or it slipped his mind. One of the two. It could have been accidental. He just might have been like super excited to show you guys some DDR5 on some cheap chip. And, you know, cool. I mean, I make mistakes too. It happens. But this really does show DDR4 in its worst possible light. And we're going to take a look at some benchmarks here soon. So just a quick rundown for anybody watching this. If you just want the TLDR version, if you're running an Intel system, Rocket Lake or Alder Lake, and likely Raptor Lake, and you're using DDR4, you have to run it in gear 1. Otherwise, you're just wasting time. For Zen, it's the same thing. You have to run your fabric clock and your RAM 1-to-1 ratio. Just don't ever not do that because you're just throwing away tons of performance by doing that. So DDR4 on Alder Lake has to be gear 1. DDR2 or DDR5 is gear 2. And then they have a gear 4, which is really only for people that want to test out like motherboards, like how far clocks can go and things like that. It's not for gamers, doesn't really matter. So all you need to know, gear 1, DDR4, gear 2, DDR5, and then same thing with AMD, 1-to-1 ratio is necessary. Okay, so let's go check out some of Steve's numbers. All right, so out of the 12 games he tested, I have 5. Watch Dogs Legion is one of them, and we'll go ahead and take a look at, I kind of made my own thing here in a minute, but he's got the 12100 with the DDR4 3200 C14 beating out the DDR4 4000 C19 kit. And this should have been a massive red flag, especially this one, because this is a large gap here. This is a very noticeable difference. In some games, it's not as noticeable, but right here, this should never happen. And I will show you why this is technically impossible unless this is running in gear 2, which it obviously is, which means that this performance number here is artificially limited because of either an accident or this is being done intentionally. And that's the perception that people have. They're like, this can only be one of the two. If it's accidental, all you have to do is come out and say, whoops, slipped my mind. Gear 1 can't run at these speeds, and this data is just simply no good. Or for some reason, the narrative of pushing DDR4 3200 is a real thing. I don't think that one's the case, but I mean, it could really only be one of these two options. The other thing that a lot of people are saying is it artificially makes this DDR5 4800 look good because this should be out to here, not all the way back here. Now, out of the games tested, as I mentioned, I have 5, so we're going to be testing these. So I took all of Steve's numbers and compiled. So we have the DDR4 C14 dual rank kit. This is likely in gear 1 because it should automatically do that. We have no idea what his nanoseconds are. We don't know if he's running XMP or tuned. He doesn't really go into any of that. We're assuming it's just XMP. And okay. And then we have the 4000 C19 XMP once again. We're assuming it's gear 2 because it can't be gear 1. I wouldn't think it's gear 4. And nanoseconds, we have no idea. Basically, we have no idea how fast these actually are. All right, sorry, I had to edit that. My thing didn't save right. But on average, on the 1% lows, it comes down to 3.6% faster for DDR4 3200 versus DDR4 4000. Like I said, this should be a massive red flag for anybody out there. And then on average, it's coming in at 2% faster. So yeah, that just doesn't seem right. That's because it's not, and it's artificially making this look better than it actually is. All right, so I decided to go ahead and test these 5 games for myself using similar memory. I'm using the Patriot Viper DDR4 4000 C19 kit. So basically the same thing. It should be within a few percentage points of what he's using. And I'm just going to be running it at XMP. I'm not going to tune it. Well, that's actually not true. I did tune it, so this way you do see tune numbers as well. But we're really just comparing the XMP profile of this kit, single rank B die, which by the way, if you want to get the best DDR4, you might want to get it now. These haven't been going on sale and they're starting to sell out. So I would get some now. However, there is a better kit, and that would be the next one that I used. Now, surprisingly, HP makes memory, and they advertise it. It is B-die, and it's a dual-rank kit. This one happens to be DDR4 3600C14. So all I did was just take it from 3600 down to 32, just left it straight XMP. So it's basically going to be the same thing that Steve was using. And these right now are the cheapest, at least here in the US, the cheapest dual-rank B-die kit, and this is technically the best memory you can get for PC gaming. Point blank in the period, there's no debating that at this point in time. It just is. And these are on sale on Amazon for only $210. It's actually pretty good. These will do the 4000 C15 numbers that you'll be seeing. This will max out Alder Lake. This will max out Zen 3. So if you want to get the best, this is a good deal. I would actually recommend this over the two Viper kits because they're going to be about the same price and these will be better. So obviously the 12100 doesn't work here. I can't use DDR4 4000 on it. So I'm using the i5 12600K instead. It is an overclocked version, but it doesn't matter because it's the same thing. And all we really want to see is the difference between the two kits. So everything else has been normalized. I couldn't get access to my buddy's RTX 3090, my buddy Austin. He got COVID. I wish him a speedy recovery. So I used an RTX 3060 Ti. I just used DLSS at the performance mode to go ahead and get the GPU out of the way to try to make up the difference between that and something like a 3090 Ti. But everything else is the same, the exact same settings that Steve had. 1080p, he seemed to do high or very high per game. I used the exact same settings that he did, or what he had listed rather. And for Spider-Man, we did the ray tracing and all of that stuff. Everything's exactly the same other than that. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at why it's 100% impossible for the DDR4 3200 C14 to be faster than the DDR4 4000 C19. Alrighty, so if we take a quick look here, we have the DDR4 3200 C14 dual rank kit. This is coming up at 55.9 nanoseconds, that's the latency, and at 44,730 megabytes per second. So that's its memory bandwidth. Then moving on to the 4000 C19 kit, just XMP, we have that coming in at 51.2 nanoseconds on latency and 418 megabytes per second. When we put these side by side, this is what they look like. So the single rank XMP is both lower in latency and higher in memory bandwidth. This is how you measure memory speed. It's not the mega transfers per second. It's not its cache latency. It's actual latency overall and memory bandwidth. So compared to the 3200 C14 dual rank, so we're significantly lower on memory bandwidth and higher on latency. This is physically impossible to be faster than this. It is 100% impossible. Now, if this had significantly higher memory bandwidth, but still the higher latency, maybe that could be faster. Or if it had lower latency with the lower memory bandwidth, then maybe it could be faster. You know, you'd have to test that out. But when it's lower here and lower here, that just means slower, point blank in the period. Now, moving on to the same 5 games with my test system using the RAM as I just showed you, as they were configured, we go ahead and can see that the 4000 C19 XMP kit with Gear 1 at 51 nanoseconds is coming in at 10.5% faster on the 1% low and 5.6% faster on average. And if we compare to Steve's numbers, that makes this a 14-point swing in favor of the 1% low and a 7.5% swing in favor of the average. So that is a massive gulf in performance difference there. Now, I went ahead and put in the 4000 C15 tuned memory. So this is at 44 nanoseconds, which, by the way, I only had to tune 3 subtimings to get this. So yeah, you might want to look into that, and we can talk about that in a future video. But the performance difference isn't that much higher because we're very GPU bound at 1080p with the settings that Steve used. GPUs today just aren't powerful enough. If you really want to see the difference, you have to go much lower, but whatever. There's still performance to be gained by changing 3 settings in the BIOS. So this is ideal. This is where you want Alder Lake. This isn't bad. I mean, for just click and go. This is not good. This is unacceptable. Anything over 55 nanoseconds, no good. You just shouldn't use it unless you're using an X3D chip. Now, I don't want to come off and seem like I'm trying to beat Steve over the head with this. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to educate him and you guys. I'm trying to give everybody the information that they need so they understand this stuff. A lot of people don't understand RAM. I didn't really have it all figured out up until here recently. I had to sit down, spend hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars to get this all figured out. It takes time and it takes work, and a lot of people don't want to put that in. So I'm trying to give you guys the TLDR version in this very long video, but trust me, this is a lot shorter than somebody, going out figuring all of this out on their own. So I want this to be a helpful video. I'm hoping everybody's learning something here, how to properly measure these things and figure out what's actually faster. And that information is important if you're going out buying something, because you want to buy the fastest thing at a certain price point. Everybody has a price target. Right now, DDR4 is simply unbeatable. And that's just the breaks. Now, if you want to go ahead and even compete with DDR4, let me go ahead and show you what you actually need. To run DDR5 at the levels that you need to be competitive, or even near, not even BDI, just even good DDR4, you're going to need something like the MSI Meg Z690 Unify X. This is a $450 motherboard, and the reason why you need this board is because it's 2 DIMMs per channel. Now, I tried an ITX board, and the DIMMs are much closer, and I'll talk to you guys how that doesn't even work. You need, like, this kind of board, you need this kind of gap in between, and you need, like, there's just no other option, because you need to hit frequencies that are so high that standard motherboards just can't do it. The motherboard is the main limitation of DDR5 at this point in time. So not only are you going to need this type of motherboard, you're going to need this kind of RAM. So you have 350 or 300 plus 450, so you're up to $750 just for motherboard and RAM. That's a bit much for most people to swallow. Now, if you're a super enthusiast and you just want to play with the best hardware, yeah, you can. If you get lucky, you're also going to need good bins. But if you get real lucky, these two could be better than DDR4. But you're not done yet, because you still need another component, and that is high-end cooling. I would not recommend DDR4 6400 on anything less than a 360mm AIO. I was using the AK620 DEEPCOOL cooler, which is basically on par with something like a 240mm AIO, and I could not keep the 12600K cool at DDR5 6400. And I'll go through my woes with you guys here in a sec, which is the main reason why I will not be recommending DDR5 anytime soon to a PC gamer. Now, why do you need all of that really expensive stuff to compete with DDR4? Because DDR5 6400, even at C32, is still slower than BDI. So you can just buy this memory for $210 and do a little bit of tweaking, and it's gonna be way faster. Out of the box, they're even about the same. So you're spending more money for nothing. So why would you buy such an expensive kit? Well, if you have a Unify X or an Asus Apex or an EVGA Dark or one of the boards that are really designed to push DDR5 to its limits, well, then you can take that kit and you can push it up to DDR5 7000. And if you get real lucky with your binning, you can hit that golden sample spot of DDR5 7600, which is going to be the sweet spot. So after doing my own testing and relying on testing of other people that I personally trust, you're really going to want DDR5 between 7200 and 7600 to match and beat what you can do with Samsung BDI. I think at 7600, DDR5 will be superior. It'll have memory bandwidth and lower latency, so it'll just be the perfect package. The trouble is, almost no motherboards can do that. Even if you buy a $500 motherboard, there's no guarantee you can do that. You need to get super lucky on your bins at every step of the way. Even the CPU IMC, you need to get a golden sample of that. It's just not worth it at this point in time. In reality, I'm not interested in DDR5 until Z790 comes out. And this is where Steve's recommendation kind of falls apart. His main point to the video, according to him, was you should buy DDR5 now because in the future it's going to be the standard, which, duh, of course it will be. That makes sense. The trouble is, today's motherboards just can't hit the speeds that you need. So the TLDR version of this is until there are motherboards within your price range that can do DDR5 7200 at the minimum, 7600, I'm pretty sure you're good. 8,000 would be ideal, but somewhere in that range, it's not worth it because it's still going to be worse than the $210 B-die kit that I'm showing you right now for gaming. Now, DDR5 makes sense for productivity workloads and other things out there, but when it comes to gaming, just simply doesn't make sense. It exists for server, and it's just trickling out to us. For gaming, you get good enough memory bandwidth from DDR4, but you get that superior latency, and that's why it's the way to go. And honestly, this is one of the main reasons why Zen 4, I'm not going to recommend it. It's just not going to be a good experience. AMD already came out and said that with DDR5 6000 C30, which is basically the same kit, just with slightly lower timings, you're still getting 63 nanoseconds. And you saw how I reacted to 56 nanoseconds. 63 is 100% wholly unacceptable. That will cause horrible 1% lows and stuttering. It's just not a gaming chip. AMD found a way around this by going ahead and doing the X3D. So for gamers out there, you should completely skip Zen 4, get the X3D, or if you have an AM4 board, the 5800 X3D, that works too. Now, the reason why the X3Ds are good options because it just completely eliminates memory as a problem. But instead of paying more money for memory, you're going to pay AMD more money for the CPU. So whichever way you slice this, guys, you're going to be paying more money. So it's either you can save the money, get some decent B-die, which out of the box in XMP will compete and even beat DDR5, the better kits as of now. Or you can go ahead and learn to tune. But if you tune both, you're going to either need the most expensive stuff in the world for DDR5 to get it to a comparable level, or you can save a crap ton of money and just go DDR4. Now that is the situation with DDR5. For me personally, I went through about 6 different motherboards. I couldn't hit DDR4 6400 XMP on any board under $200 because that's my cap. I don't go over $200. So eventually I got to the MSI A Pro, and that one did work. However, my CPU ran 15 to 20C higher because of the DDR5. So your CPU is going to run much hotter, which means you're also going to need a better cooler. I've been buying stuff left and right to try to get the content for you, to show you guys the DDR5 6400 kit. And I eventually had to throw up my hands because the water cooler I got in didn't have LGA 1700. I fashioned one. Now the DDR5 board is freaking out on me. I'm like, I'm done with this. DDR5 is a nightmare from my personal experience once you get to the higher speed stuff. 6,000 on down, that works just fine, but it's much, much, much slower than much cheaper DDR4. So for you guys out there that are like, Chris, this is a lot of stuff, I don't want to be spending $200 on RAM, that's completely understandable. You can go with kind of the middle of the road RAM. So something like this Kingston Fury Renegade 32 gig kit, 3600, and this is C16. This is going to get you most of the performance that you're seeing out of these other kits. This will be very, very close to that DDR4 4000 kit. It might lose in some games, it might win in others. I believe that this is probably a single rank kit, but whatever. It's $131 for 32 gigabytes. And if you want to tune this, you might be able to get this up to 3800, keep the C16, and you're going to get much better performance. But even if you don't want to tune, this is the middle ground. And there's literally nothing from DDR5 that's anywhere near this that would give you this level of performance right now. So from the nightmare that has been the past month or so for me trying to get DDR5 to work. I wanted to mention the ITX problem. I went ahead and bought the Gigabyte Z690 DDR5 ITX board that they have because it was cheap. It was like $150 or something. But the DIMM slots were so close, the RAM was running at 80C. Maybe I'll throw up a picture here. I actually have a screen cap of it. I reached out to my Kingston rep and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is the board's fault, but you guys should be aware of this. And yeah, so you have to be very conscious. Like you may even need a RAM fan to properly use high-speed DDR5. Active cooling is probably going to be necessary, especially if you do have something like a Unify X or one of those boards and you're pushing them to the absolute limits. And with the blowback I get from telling you guys just to tune 3 or 4 settings in your BIOS to get, 20 extra percent performance, most people aren't going to do that. So that's why I'm saying it's just simply not worth it. And this push from Hardware Unboxed to get you guys into a platform that simply isn't ready. By every metric, it isn't ready. And by using data that is clearly wrong, and misleading, that's the problem. And hopefully Steve just goes, oh crap, like it slipped his mind and he's just like, oh shit, okay. And that's the end of it. And he can do a video and fix it. You know, nothing here is completely broken. Can be easily fixed. And Steve, if you don't understand what it is I'm talking about, you know, we chat. You can just be like, hey, Chris, what does this mean? So on and so forth. I'd be more than happy to help you out. The stuff is a little bit complicated, but once you get it, you kind of get it. And it's like riding a bike. You just don't forget it unless you don't use it for like 20, 30 years maybe. But at the end of the day, it's not that important. Like I said, you could just get that 3600 C16 kit. That's going to do most of what you want. The real issue here is a lot of people are getting hyped up for Zen 4. Like I said, if you're a gamer, primarily a gamer, just skip it. Wait for the Zen 4 3D, keep your AM4 board, get the 5800X 3D, and then you don't have to worry about it. Because buying high performance DDR5 for the 3D chips makes 0 sense. Because the whole point of buying the Zen 3D and paying AMD a large premium for the 3D cache is so you can use a cheap motherboard that just barely runs the thing and using something like that 4800 memory. That's where that makes sense. Not on, you know, like Intel, you have to tune. You want to get the most performance out of your stuff. I've shown how much performance you can get out of your systems just by tuning a little bit. It's not like an all-day event. Just take a couple of hours and do the thing. Same thing with like Zen 3. And you will need to do that with Zen 4 as well, because if you're running 63 nanoseconds on your RAM, there's no memory bandwidth in the world that you can get out of 6,000 mega transfers that's going to make up for that. That's simply too laggy, and it's just going to lead to a bad experience for most people. So if you guys are out there and gaming is your primary thing, you don't have to worry that much about RAM, but I'm going to break this down into some simple categories. So if you're a budget gamer and you want to save the most money and get the max performance for your dollar, you get the Patriot Viper SteelSeries 16 gig 4000 kit. This comes with an XMP of 191919. They do have one that's 161616. I tested that for this video. It's no different, really. The primary timings don't really matter that much. So just buy this, it's cheaper. Normally these will go on sale for about $78. You can check eBay and other places. They go on sale pretty regular, but they are getting rarer and people are starting to figure this out. So I don't know. I'm sure they'll be on sale for the holidays. So you can buy it for $100. You're better off going with the 210 for the HP V10 RGBs. This is what I have. This right here will do the same thing. Basically, when you see RAM, this number doesn't really mean much of anything, especially when it comes to B-die, because B-die can pretty much scale unless it's the 3200 stuff. That does have some limitations. But this right here, this will hit 4000 C15, all the same numbers that I had earlier. So right now, this is my main recommendation if you're a high-performance gamer that's okay with doing a little bit of tweaking to get the maximum performance out of your system. And if you just don't want to deal with any of that and just want to throw it in, do XMP, this is my recommendation. The Kingston Fury 32 gig, C16 3600s, $130. Boom, you're done. Don't worry about it. And DDR5, it's going to take a few years to really catch up to this, especially anywhere near this price point. And then if you're just balls out, want to go ahead and tinker, you're not really a gamer, you're just a hardware nut, go ahead and buy these. I mean, they're fun to play with, but you have to make sure you have all the right equipment. I'm a budget guy, so I didn't have any of that stuff. And buying coolers and a bunch of other stuff that personally I have no interest in just to test these was a bit much for me. But this kit is awesome. I was able to get it down to 6000 C28. And yeah, okay, that's a little bit better than what's out there, and this will be pretty good for something like Zen 4. But like I said, Zen 4 just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and really you need to pair something like this with this level of motherboard. So if you have a motherboard like this, sure, go for it, have at it. You know, that's on you. Have your fun. I'm not telling you not to, but for somebody who just wants to game, this is way too excessive. Alrighty guys, hopefully that breakdown kind of works for you. If anybody has any questions, I mean, I'm in the Discord all the time chatting with the guys. If you support the channel, you can get direct access to me. And if you're another creator and you're like, hey, I didn't know any of this, or how do I, whatever, go ahead and reach out. Just go to the About page on my channel. It's got my email. I'd be more than happy to help you guys out with this stuff, because the more people understand this, the easier it is to just pick the recommendations. DDR5 is not quite there yet, guys. Excuse me, I've been coughing, been talking for a while, but DDR5 is getting there. We're just not there yet. You you're gonna need at least a Z790 motherboard, probably gonna need Raptor Lake to get to that 7200, 7600 range, and you're still gonna be paying a premium. I believe even Z790, you're still gonna need a 2-DIMM board. Before we get to the point where we have 4-DIMM boards, you know, the $150, $200 motherboards that can do DDR5 at the speeds that are necessary, you're probably looking, you know, Meteor Lake Zen 5. So that would kind of be when I would be like, okay, it's time to transition over. But even then, the DDR4 isn't going to be like obsolete. So it just really depends if you need that level of CPU. Well, at that point in time, it will make some sense. If you're a gamer and you just don't want to go Intel, and let's say Zen 3 isn't cutting the mustard, something like RPCS3, and you're like, well, Zen 4 will do what I need, you're best off waiting for the X3D. Yes, you'll pay a premium, but then you could buy the memory that Steve is recommending, and it doesn't matter. It'll work just fine. Yeah, sure, it'll be slightly slower than using like that 6400 kit, but in my own testing, fully tuned 5800 X3D versus not was like 4%. So doesn't really matter. So that would be the chip that I'd recommend for the AMD guys. And for the Intel guys, you have DDR4. It's the better option. Just stick with it. Your CPU runs cooler. You can save money by not needing a bigger cooler. You can get I have a $140 ASRock Steel Legend over there. That's what I used. Worked just fine. $140 Z690, brand new motherboard. So DDR4, you can get cheap boards. You can, there's no downside. It's all upsides for DDR4. It's all downsides for DDR5. That's just my experience. But after a month of constantly testing this, I think I'm in a position to let you guys know where this is at. And most of the DDR5 enthusiast guys out there, your Buildzoids or Connor from Graphically Challenged, that dude is way into DDR5. He will tell you the exact, they'll both tell you the exact same thing. Ivan from Frame Chasers, he'll tell you the exact same thing. It's just not quite there yet, especially on the mainstream boards, which are 4-DIMM boards. It's just going to take time, guys. So save the money and enjoy your games. Save money, enjoy the games, don't worry about it. And that's my recommendation. Links to everything are in the description down below. If you do want to help support the channel, please use the affiliate links. That does help out. And then I can buy this stuff and I can test it out. And then I can give you all of the advice like this. So alrighty, guys, that's pretty much it for this video. I know this is a bit rambly. This all kind of came together. I wasn't planning on doing it this way. I was just going to bitch about my experience with DDR5 and be like, don't do it. The high performance stuff, it's just not there yet for anybody who cares about value. If you don't care about value, yeah, go for it. Have fun. Do your thing. So anyway, guys, that's it for me here today. Hope this was helpful and cleared this up for everybody. And yeah, I will catch you guys in the next video.